Give us a sense from your perspective what kind of program your students are going to be putting on.
Well, essentially, we've been asked to do a couple things. First of all, raise awareness of citizens from the past who have done some pretty extraordinary things, and to do it in a way in which is sort of, non-traditional from your typical history tour, which is to lend voice to some aspect of their lives. And so what we're doing is we're having students perform monologues about these individuals literally at their grave sites, and it will give people who attend a greater sense not only of Lincoln's history, the nation's history, but also the extraordinary individuals that are there at that cemetery. And I think that, and this is just one portion of the cemetery that we're utilizing because the tour will be on foot, and so it only gives really a glimmer of really the stories that are there. And so essentially we're trying to not necessarily make history alive, but maybe do it in a way that's creative and different, and we'll give a lot of information to people who attend that wouldn't otherwise find this information.
The tour is called Hearing from Heroes, and that makes me curious about the perspective that your students will take as they're performing. Will they be giving a talk about the person, or will they be doing it sort of Chautauqua style, where they actually become the person or the character?
In some instances, they actually become the character, and in other instances, they might be an acquaintance or someone who lived during that time. So we are asking students to sort of immerse themselves in that time period and to speak from that perspective.
In this type of case where there is no written script for you to rent, like a play, for example, do you write the script, or do the students write the script? And if so, what's that process like?
Really, the process goes in three phases. We've been consulting with Ed Zimmer, who's been giving us all the historical elements, and then we sort of read through the historical elements, pinpoint the interesting elements we think would be worthy of an audience, for them to know. And then we started to craft a monologue based on that short blurb or storytelling, and trying to do it in a way that's interesting but also gives some creative elements to their lives, and not necessarily just a bulleted fact-by-fact process. It's a real challenge, though, because these people led full lives, and so you have to really go through a process of the things that they experienced and witnessed, and what remains. But it's a great deal of fun, and it's incredibly interesting to hear these and read about these people.
I'm wondering, given the notoriously busy schedule that not only you and most students have, and the fact that this is not part of your general curriculum, how do you fit it in?
Well, essentially, it's a labor of love, and so we have students, for example, who are participating who just finished full production of To Kill a Mockingbird, but it's manageable in a sense that they're performing for maybe 5 to 7 minutes, and so it's just something that they're ready to jump in and do. And so a lot of it is sort of, I'll give them readings to do when they have time. We'll come back and meet periodically to discuss, and we work that way. And then it's just all going to come together in the next 2 weeks. And the students are very professional, and they're very passionate, and it's a great learning model in the sense that they're picking up a lot of knowledge, but they're also actively being a part of it. And so you're right, it is busy. It's not a part of our general day, but we believe really strongly in making a connection between our past and our present. Being at Lincoln High, history is a big part of it, and so it's just something our students really enjoy doing.
Do you go to students individually and say, hey, I need this character, you'd be right for it, or do you just post something and say, I need 10 people who want to participate, come and volunteer if you're interested, or how do you go about that process?
For this process, I specifically asked students, and I asked them because of previous work they've done and just a conversation about the project and their general interest, and I just kind of gauged how committed they would be. And so for this, we didn't do an open audition simply because of time, and I wanted to keep our group at about 10 individuals that could work cohesively. And so these are students I knew were dependable and had a strong work ethic.
And are they going to be costumed in the period that they're representing?
Yeah, we are meeting with the customers at the University of Nebraska to try to reflect the time period in which they had lived.
So when people come to this tour, they're going to see some really well-researched, produced, and probably very interesting and entertaining dramatic presentations.
Yeah, without question. And these stories, I'd say a majority of them I did not know are absolutely captivating. The individuals that we've selected just had really incredible lives from the founding of the state and the city, through to the 20th century. The stories are enriching because it not only occurred in Lincoln, but a lot of these people had impacts worldwide. Some were ambassadors, some had escaped slavery, some served in the Civil War, and so it's just not a regional piece. These individuals changed the world.
What does participation in something like this do for the students?
Well, essentially, it gives them a strong connection to their community. It gives them a full participation in not only learning more about history, but thinking about how to critically analyze, an expression based upon that. And so there's a lot of questions and there's a lot of dialogue that goes in with that. But ultimately, I strongly believe that our young people can never know enough about their history. And so for me, it's just an engaging way to get them to know more about where they are and the people that once lived here.
Do you get a lot of requests or opportunities like this, or is this relatively unusual to get an outside request to compose a performance like this?
Yeah, I've never had a request like this. I'm very honored to be a part of it. They had known about some of my work I did with the Emmett Till Project and probably knew my love of history. And so this was a request that was made to me, and I jumped at the chance not only to work with the Hildegard Center of the Arts, not only to work with Ed Zimmer, but also to have this be an opportunity for our students to do more participation outside of the school walls. And so, no, this is a very unique opportunity, and I don't know how often they'll come around, so you really have to take them when they arrive.
Tell me a little more about your interest and appreciation of history and how this struck you personally.
Well, I don't, my family's always been very good at instilling an appreciation for our past. And my interest in history, I can't really pinpoint it, but it's always been there. And so any opportunity I have to make connections with the past to the present is one that I always take, because I think it's very important that we acknowledge those elements to see how we arrive to where we are. But also, as an English teacher and as a storyteller, what I find interesting is these extraordinary lives are more amazing than fiction, and many stories are left untold. And when you dust them off and bring them to life, there's some amazing things that can happen. And so I almost look at it as sort of a treasure hunt of, what stories and what experiences are out there that are waiting to be told.
Are you a native of this area?
Yeah, I was raised in Lincoln, attended elementary school and middle school here, and then my father's job sent us to Grand Island for the duration of my high school years. But yeah, I consider myself a Lincoln native.
So this is a discovery voyage for you too.
Oh, without question. And the Lincoln's history is far more dynamic and extraordinary than I had ever thought. And to know that these stories are just within reach, and these lives have been led, and now they're at rest, and we can go back through and see what they've accomplished is really amazing.
Has this given you any help as you've developed a perspective on these people, these 10 people that we're going to portray? Has this given you any help in your perspective or your career?
Well, I think one thing that it revealed to me, and I hope to pass it on to my students, is that these individuals didn't necessarily see any barriers for themselves in terms of occupation, in terms of what they could accomplish in life, and to use their life stories as lessons. Many of them overcame the institution of slavery. Many of them overcame gender bias. Many of them overcame economic situations to really achieve their life goals is something that I know as a teacher is something that I enjoy passing on to my students, but also to know that many of them actually attended Lincoln High. Some of them actually attended Lincoln High becomes a good point of reference for my students to take with them.